In the silent vastness of space, Earth drifts suspended, fragile, glowing against an endless black. Scientists call it the pale blue dot, a cosmic miracle wrapped in laws so precise that even a millimeter shift could unravel existence itself. But centuries before telescopes scanned the heavens or rockets pierced the sky, words were spoken in the deserts of Arabia that described this same universe. Its order, its balance, its endless expansion. These were not the words of scientists, but verses from the Quran. And today, as NASA maps galaxies billions of light years away, many find themselves asking, how could a 1,400-year-old scripture align so closely with what modern science is only now beginning to uncover? Before we explore the astonishing connections between NASA's discoveries and the ancient text, make sure you subscribe for more mind-opening content and tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching this from. When the Quran was revealed, the world was small. The stars were mysterious. The earth seemed flat to many, and the idea of other worlds beyond ours was almost unimaginable. Yet the verses describe the heavens and the earth not as fixed, but as signs. Signs to be studied, contemplated, and decoded. The language wasn't technical, but it was deeply layered, speaking both to the soul and, astonishingly, to the mind of the modern physicist. NASA, with its cutting-edge observatories, now captures images of galaxies stretching farther apart each year. The expansion of the universe, first mathematically described by Edwin Hubble, later confirmed by cosmic background radiation, is a cornerstone of modern cosmology. Yet 400 years earlier, a verse proclaimed, "And the heaven we constructed with strength." And indeed, we are its expander. A single line, short and poetic, that mirrors one of science's most monumental discoveries. For many, this isn't coincidence. It's convergence, a meeting point between revelation and reason, faith and physics. Some argue it's metaphor. Others see it as divine foresight. But regardless of belief, it sparks a universal sense of wonder. Could an ancient text really contain echoes of cosmic truths still unfolding today? Think about it. Those words were uttered in a world lit only by fire, and yet they describe a universe still stretching, still being written. NASA calls it expansion. The Quran calls it creation continuing. But expansion isn't just about the size of the cosmos. It's about the growth of understanding. The universe expands outward, and our knowledge expands inward, reaching into the heart of what existence means. Every new discovery, from the dance of galaxies to the bending of space-time, doesn't contradict the essence of spiritual insight. It amplifies it. The Quran repeatedly invites reflection, to look at the sky, to measure the order, to notice the patterns, and in that, science finds an unlikely ally. Then comes the choreography of the cosmos, the silent orbits, the gravitational symphony that keeps everything in motion. NASA tracks the pathways of planets, the rotations of stars, the precise motion of moons. It's all numbers and laws, yet somehow it's also beauty. The Quran speaks of the sun and moon, each floating in an orbit, not standing still, not colliding, but moving with purpose in balance. It's poetic, yes, but also profoundly accurate. In an era when humans thought the sun circled the earth, this description hinted at a cosmic system far more intricate than anyone could have imagined. And the more science learns, the more the language of those ancient verses begins to sound less like poetry and more like precision. Orbits, expansion, balance, all of it forms a pattern of harmony between revelation and reality. It doesn't demand blind belief. It demands reflection, because the deeper question is not just what the universe is doing, but why. Why does the cosmos follow laws so exact that life itself depends on them? Why does the human mind, bound to one planet, even have the capacity to understand the infinite? Perhaps the answer lies not in the stars alone, but in the meaning behind them. And as both the Quran and NASA continue to unveil the mysteries of creation, we stand between the two, humans suspended between the text and the telescope, seeking truth in both the word and the world. Picture the cosmos not as chaos, but as choreography, where everything from dust to dwarf planets moves according to steps set long before anyone named them. The moon circles Earth, Earth loops the sun wheels around the galaxy, and the galaxy itself sails through a greater sea of motion, each layer of orbit nested like rings within rings. NASA calculates these paths with exquisite precision, plotting trajectories so exact that a probe launched today can thread a gravitational needle around Jupiter years from now. Those calculations aren't guesses. They're trust in a dependable order. An order that allows astronauts on the International Space Station to race around Earth at roughly 28,000 km per hour and still arrive where the math says they will. The Quran evokes this order with striking simplicity, speaking of the sun and the moon, each swimming in an orbit, language that captures both the motion and the medium, as if the fabric of space were a sea and the heavenly bodies were gliding across its surface. Think of the elegance here: Kepler's ellipses, Newton's gravity, Einstein's curved space-time, layers of explanation unspooling from a reality that was always already there. Even the places where gravity balances gravity, Lagrange points become cosmic harbors where observatories like the James Webb Space Telescope can park and stare into time. If you've ever seen an eclipse map years in advance or watched a launch window calculated down to the second, you've watched faith in the universe's consistency made practical. And beneath the numbers lies a message that resonates with revelation. Creation is not a frantic accident, but a system, a composition, a rhythm that invites us to listen. The Quran's invitation to reflect becomes an invitation to calculate, to model, to test and verify. And in doing so, to marvel that human minds, every night fragile, can decode the grand celestial script. Seasons return, tides answer the moon, prayer times sweep across latitudes with the sun's march. What we call mechanics, another age might have called wisdom, the dependable habit of a world that keeps its appointments. And yet, for all our mastery, we remain students in a vast classroom. Every new exoplanet, every shepherd moon carving rings from ice, every gravitational wave whispering of black holes colliding, adds a line to the lecture notes of existence. The more we learn, the more that simple verse, objects floating in their orbits, feels less like a metaphor and more like a headline written in timeless ink. Orbits are not just paths, they're promises. And the fulfillment of those promises is what allows both science to launch and the soul to trust. Now look upward from Earth's surface, past weather and winged machines, into the thin blue veil that hugs our planet. The difference between a living world and a silent rock. The sky is more than a color. Its architecture, a layered fortress. Troposphere with its storms and breath. Stratosphere with its life-shielding ozone. Mesosphere where meteors burn to harmless ash. Thermosphere shimmering with aurora as charged particles meet magnetic lines. And beyond that, the exosphere fading into night. Wrapped around all of it is the magnetosphere, an invisible shield formed by Earth's molten heart, deflecting solar winds that would strip our atmosphere the way sand scours paint. When the sun fires a blast of radiation, our planet answers, not with panic but with protection, bending the onslaught, turning danger into dancing lights over the poles. The Quran speaks of a protected ceiling, a phrase that lands with new weight once you've seen images of airless worlds pitted and scarred, or read how spacecraft must harden their electronics to survive what our skin never feels. Consider the orchestration required for life to thrive here. The right thickness of atmosphere to keep heat without choking us. The right cocktail of gases to feed flame and lung. The right pressure to keep water liquid across vast climates. The right chemical filters to block deadly ultraviolet while letting nourishing light pass through. Even small variations would twist the dial toward desolation. Yet day after day, we walk under a roof that edits the sun for our good. Meteoroids that could devastate a city arrive as streaks of beauty and vanish. Cosmic rays that would shred DNA are blunted and bounced. Extremes of cold and heat are softened by this blue insulation. Pilots and astronauts train to respect it. Physicians and farmers depend on it. Technologists design satellites that must negotiate its layers to speak to us from orbit, all acknowledging a reality our ancestors felt on their skin. The sky keeps watch. To call this merely luck feels thin when the symphony is so precisely tuned. Core generates field. Field shapes shield. Shield preserves air. Air sustains water's cycles, and water hosts life. The Quran's wording captures the meaning of that chain in a single stroke, directing attention not just to the mechanism, but to the mercy. And notice how gratitude becomes practical here. Understanding the shield leads to stewardship, to phasing out chemicals that gnaw at ozone, to predicting solar storms that can rattle power grids, to designing habitats that mimic Earth's protection for journeys to other worlds. In this way, knowledge and reverence converge. The more we comprehend the canopy, the more we are compelled to care for it. So when you feel the warmth of daylight without the sting of its fury, when a meteor writes a harmless silver sentence across the night, when the aurora braids green fire through polar darkness, hear the quiet truth beneath the spectacle. This is not just a ceiling, it is a guardianship. A sign stretched above every city and wilderness, and like all true signs, it doesn't point to itself alone. It points beyond to the giver of shelter, the author of order, the one who made a planet into a home. Imagine standing where a river surrenders itself to the sea, and yet somehow it does not surrender at all. Fresh water, light and restless, rides over the salt, heavier and deliberate. Salinity, temperature and density draw an invisible line that the eye can't see, but instruments can trace. Oceanographers name these frontiers haloclines and thermoclines, meeting points that resist immediate mixing, boundaries that shift and breathe but hold their character, like two languages sharing the same page. Sailors have watched ships cut from dark green into turquoise without crossing a shoreline. Divers have felt a sudden chill slide over their skin as if passing through a ghostly door. And satellites map places where currents braid but do not blur. The Quran's image of two seas meeting, between them a barrier they do not transgress, lands with a surprising modern weight. When you learn that estuaries, straits and deep channels often keep their waters layered, separated by gradients as real as a wall to the creatures that live within them, this is not a static postcard, but a living negotiation. Tides tug, winds stir, lunar cycles breathe, seasonal floods surge, and still the border holds long enough to matter. Long enough for mangroves to root in brackish nurseries, for salmon to recalibrate their bodies on the way home, for plankton blooms to ignite where nutrients ride the boundary like sparks. It is a design that teaches without a lecture. Difference can sit side by side without collapse. Identity can persist at the edge of encounter. And life thrives not in uniformity, but in the careful tension between worlds. Scientists quantify the gradients with probes and equations. The verse compresses the insight into a single memorable sign. And the more closely you look, the more layers appear. Mediterranean water slipping as a dense ribbon along the Atlantic seabed through the Strait of Gibraltar. The Black Sea's low salinity surface floating over deeper salt. The Persian Gulf's hot saline water pouring out in a tongue beneath cooler Arabian sea layers. Boundaries shape behavior. Predators patrol edges. Larvae drift to safe harbors. Fishermen learn the language of lines that no map prints. In that grammar of the ocean, you can read a moral. The world's beauty is not the smearing of all things into one, but the wise meeting of differences, each held by a barrier that protects, regulates, and in time allows a measured exchange. What the ocean shows, the heart understands. Healthy borders are not prisons. They are stewardship, the conditions for flourishing. Follow the water and you find life. Not as a slogan, but as a pattern so relentless that astrobiology has made it a compass. On Earth, wherever liquid water lingers, life arrives like a faithful traveler. In clouds that seed rain with bacteria, in pores of volcanic rock where hot chemistry whispers possibilities, in Antarctic brines that would freeze a finger, but cradle microbes that write their stories in salt. Biologists will tell you that cells are little oceans themselves, membranes cradling a watery world where proteins fold, DNA is red, and energy flows in gradients like tides across a shore. The Quran's assertion that every living thing is made from water reads like a summary written before the textbooks existed. A simple line that fits everything from a seed's first swell to a whale's rolling breath. Look at what our machines now chase across the solar system. Dried riverbeds on Mars traced like veins on a palm. Geysers on Enceladus releasing plumes from a buried sea. Europa's cracked ice hinting at a global ocean listening in the dark. Titan's methane lakes reminding us that solvents might come in flavors we haven't learned to taste. And still, the baseline never changes. Where water remains liquid, hope rises. Because water is not merely a substance, but an enabling stage, the medium that lets molecules meet, react, remember, and eventually reproduce. Chemists invoke polarity, hydrogen bonds, specific heat. Physicians think of blood, lymph, cytoplasm. Farmers watch canals and monsoons, prayers in their timing. And each domain of knowledge echoes the same refrain. Water is the theater where life performs. It is also the teacher of humility. A droplet holds more choreography than any empire. Surface tension sculpting spheres. Capillaries wicking against gravity. Oceans storing the sun's heat and breathing it back as weather that writes the seasons across continents. Remove water, and deserts write their verdict in bone and dust. Misuse water, and civilizations learn hard arithmetic. Care for it, and generations drink a future. That is why the spiritual claim and the scientific program converge into responsibility. If we are made by water, sustained by water, and searching the heavens with water as our signpost, then gratitude must look like guardianship. Protect the river sources where mountains gather clouds, and poison the aquifers where memory of rain sleeps. Repair the wetlands where rivers rehearse meeting the sea. Reuse and respect so that what cycles returns clean enough to bless. In the end, the strange truth is that the ocean and the cell, the glacier and the tear, the rainstorm and the ritual ablution all sing a single chorus. Life flows where water is honored, and if the universe is written in signs, then this sign is as close as your pulse, as vast as the sea, as hopeful as a distant moon hiding an ocean beneath its ice, inviting us to keep looking outward with wonder and inward with care. Stand at the foot of a mountain and feel how the world gathers itself into stone. What looks like a single wall is really a saga. Plates colliding over millions of years. Rock folding like slow thunder. Roots of cooled crust diving deep beneath the surface where no eye can follow. Geologists map those hidden roots, the isostatic foundations that help heavy ranges float in balance. While the Quran reaches for an image as simple and strong as the thing itself, mountains likened to pegs. Anchoring the land, the poetry doesn't rewrite physics, but it lands close to a truth scientists keep uncovering. Mountains are not ornaments. They are engines of stability and life. They redirect winds and birth rain shadows, bringing moisture from clouds to feed rivers that lace continents with drinkable memory. They grind themselves down into fertile soil as glaciers and storms sculpt their faces. sending minerals to plains where crops will rise. They participate in the planet's long breath, the carbon silicate cycle, where fresh rock weathers and draws carbon dioxide from the air. A patient thermostat that helps keep climates within the narrow band, where civilizations can dare to plan a harvest. They store water as ice and snow, releasing it like a covenant in spring, so cities downstream can count on a future measured in melt. They shelter unique ecosystems, pockets of creation, tuning themselves to altitude and sun angle, teaching us that life adapts best where the world gives it contours. None of this means mountains pin the crust like tent stakes in a literal way. The Earth's lithosphere moves, subducts, uplifts, and erodes in a living exchange. But it does mean that great ranges contribute to a steadying order in which life can flourish. Think of earthquakes releasing the strain that built those heights. The same tectonics that recycles seafloor and forges continents. Think of the lunar pull that calms Earth's tilt, while mountains shape weather below that steady sky. Order emerges from dynamic forces held in balance, and the Quran's image catches the meaning of that order in a single graspable sign. What looks immovable teaches us to move wisely. Hikers call them summits. Engineers call them loads and stresses. Farmers call them sources. And worshippers call them ayat signs. Each name circling the same insight from a different angle. Stand again at the foot of a mountain and listen to what it says without words. Strength is not stubbornness, but service. Height without humility is just rock. Greatness proves itself by what it shelters below, so the lesson stretches from granite to heartwood. Be a stabilizer in your home, a windbreak for another's storm, a quiet storehouse of blessing that releases its melt when others are thirsty. In that way, the map of the world and the map of the soul align. Both need relief, both need contours. Both need high places whose purpose is not to lord over the valleys, but to feed them. Follow that river downward and you will meet iron, the modest miracle hiding in the bones of cities and the blood that carries your breath. Astrophysics traces iron's story to the furnaces of ancient stars, where fusion builds elements up to iron, and supernovas scatter them across space like seeds. Planetary science tells how those seeds rained upon the newborn Earth, some carried by meteorites, some forged in the planet's own fiery heart, until the world grew a core that spins our magnetic shield and a crust that hides veins of ore. The Quran speaks of iron as something sent down, a phrase that resonates on more than one level, as a nod to its cosmic origin beyond our skies, as a memory of the literal descent of meteoric iron worked by early smiths, and as an acknowledgement of a gift delivered with purpose. Because iron is not only material, it is mission. With it, we built plows that turned wilderness into bread, and tools that shaped shelters from storms. With it, we forged rails that stitched coasts together, bridges that taught rivers to be roads, ships and towers and instruments that make distant minds neighbors. But iron also remembers the double-edged swords and shackles, engines of war, cages for the spirit when power forgets mercy. The verse surrounds iron with meaning, strength to defend the vulnerable, measure to test sincerity, benefit for people who wield it with justice. NASA's laboratories measure iron in Martian rocks to read the planet's wet and dry ages. Doctors measure iron in the bloodstream to gauge the body's capacity to carry life's oxygen. Historians measure eras by the metals we mastered and the morals we kept or broke while mastering them. The message threaded through all those measurements is that matter is never neutral in our hands. It becomes mirror. What we make from iron reflects what we are becoming. If the stars gave us the raw material and revelation gave us the compass, our responsibility is to align craft with conscience, to forge tools that cultivate rather than crush, to bind wounds rather than wrists. to raise roofs rather than tempers. Even the planet's inner architecture turns the lesson outward. Earth's iron core spins out an invisible mercy, the magnetosphere, that guards our atmosphere and guides migrations. So let our inner core, the conscience, spin out a field of protection around those who share our streets and tables. Consider how a single nail holds a home together. How a single deficiency in blood leaves a body exhausted. How a single alloy changes the destiny of an age. Small acts of metallurgy become parables of moral life. Use what is sent down as it was intended, as a means to lift up. And when you gaze at the night sky, remember that the metal in your keys and the metal in your veins were both born in stellar cathedrals. Their journey into your palm is a call to stewardship. Let your work be strong, but let your strength serve the soft things: children, elders, soil, water, beasts. Then the echo many hear between Quran and cosmos will come full circle. Not a headline about confirmation, but a life that confirms what the verses ask of us. Knowledge braided with humility, power braided with mercy, and hands that turn iron into instruments of